Hey guys, we are working on chapter 5 now, topic 5.1 for your notes. And we're going to work today on how can I graph two variables. So we're going to get into some graphing skills. Something useful you might want to have today is a ruler because we're going to be trying to make our graphs nice and neat. So rulers kind of can be helpful. So how can I graph two variables? Well, first off, let's talk about what we're kind of getting at here. So two variables means we have not just an x, but maybe an x and a y. That would be a two variable problem. And we can graph two variables using a system that was invented quite a while ago, actually. We're going to grab our ruler here, and on our graph paper, I'm going to draw a line going vertical up and down, and I'll put two arrows on it. And then I'm going to draw a second line going through the middle of it, something like this, and I'll put also two arrows on it. So it looks like this. Now we have a name for this type of graphing. It's called a coordinate plane or a Cartesian graph. So I have a few words that we're going to write down to kind of label this. So this is called a Cartesian graph. And really what it is the horizontal line here measures the x variable and the vertical line measures the y variable. So we call this the x and the y axis. I'm going to write x axis and y axis. And what we do is we organize it using our graph paper. So in the very middle where the x and the y axis meet right here, this is what we call 0, 0. In fact, why don't we label it for this graph? So I'm going to draw a little arrow up to here, that little point right where it meets. This is called 0, 0. Another name for it is it's called the origin. The origin is where the graph begins. So it's the original point, the starting point. But after that, here's what happens. When you go from the origin, when you go from 0, 0, and you start moving over across the graph lines, I'm going to make a little scale. I'm going to put little lines on the graph paper. This is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I kind of ran out of room, but I could keep going 8, 9, 10. Well, the same thing happens if I try to go up the y-axis. If I tried to move up my graph paper, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could keep going until I run out of space. 8. Depends on how big your graph is. Well, if I go from this 0, 0 origin and I try to move backwards on the x-axis or down, that's when we run into our negative numbers. So if I start working my way back on the x-axis, now we're talking about negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. Same thing going in the downwards direction. If I start moving down my y-axis, these are the negative numbers. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. Okay, so now that we have this graph made, it's kind of time for the next step. And the next step is we're going to plot some points. So starting at the center of our graph, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my first point over to 3, and then I'm going to move up to 5. That means my point is at 3, 5. That's my location. So we put a parentheses around it and we call it a coordinate point. 3, 5. I'm going to plot another point starting at the center, this time moving back to negative 6 on the x-axis. Then I'm going to move up to 2. And so I'm going to label it negative 6, 2, again with a parenthesis around it. Then I'm going to add another point starting at the center. This time I'm going to move over to 4 on the x-axis, and I'm going to move down to negative 6, and I'll label it 4, negative 6. And so essentially what we're doing is we're plotting these spots, these points on the graph, and it's like GPS in your car. Like it is giving you directions of how to get to that spot. So in my next point here, I'm going to go to negative 5, and then I'm going to move down to negative 7. And so my GPS would be negative 5, negative 7. That's my location. And so the name of this thing, we call it a coordinate point. It's giving us directions. The first number is the x-axis number. Tells us that the point is at x equals 3. And the second number is the y-axis number, which tells us that the y coordinate is 5. And so it's giving you that precise location on the graph. And so that's what we're practicing in this video, how to plot these points precisely. So let's try an example, like an official example 1 now. And I want you to grab your ruler and make a brand new graph. And I want it nice and neat because graphing is very precise and neat. So use your ruler, use your graph lines, and get some scale numbers on there. I would pause the video right now so that you had some time to kind of set that up and make it nice and neat. And then here's what we're going to do. Once your graph is all set up, we're going to plot some points. And we're going to label them. So the first point, we're going to call it A, is going to be at -3, 5. So that's my GPS. That means I start at the center and I go to -3. So I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3. Then I have to go up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. I'm going to move up to that location. And I'm going to label it A because that is point A. Then I'm going to graph another point. I'm going to call it B, and it's going to be at 5, 4. 5, 4. So that means I start at the center, and I'm going to move over to 5 on the x-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm going to move up to 4, and that's my point B. Okay, well, let's look at another one. Let's call this C. C's tricky. It's at 0, -4. Well, when I go to start graphing this, 0 is in the center. There's 0. And then -4, I have to move down. Okay, there it is, right there on the y-axis. That's at 0 and -4. That's letter C. All right, one more, D. Where would 5, 0 go? Well, first I have to move to 5 on the x-axis, but then I move to 0 where I'm already at 0. So that's it. That's the point where I'm going to keep it, and that's letter D. Okay, so let's see if you guys can do this now. Here is your You Try problem for today. Can you set up a brand new graph that has these coordinate points on there? So there's an A, B, C, D, E. So right now I want you to pause the video and make your own graph, sketch your own graph and plot these points. Go ahead and try. Okay, you should be unpausing the video now and you're ready to check your solution. So here's what we have. We have a graph that's hopefully nice and neat and labeled with scale numbers. And then on top of that graph, you have points that are labeled A, B, C, D, E, and F. And you can check and see, did you get them at the right locations? A is at 3, 3. B is at 1, -1. C is at 3, 1. D is at -3, -1. And then E is on the axis at 0, -5. And so your graph should look pretty similar to my graph. So guys, that kind of wraps up this quick video. The highlights here, I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable with finding coordinate points and placing them properly on your graph. And setting it up nice and neat is probably the big message here also. Graphing is a neat process, so organization is super important. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in class. Bye.